The Vakran ships appeared in the sky above New Hana on a bright morning. Their silver hulls reflected the sunlight as they descended through the clouds. In the fields below, human workers looked up briefly, then returned to their tasks. They had been expecting this visit. Taehyun stood at the landing pad outside the colony's main building. He wore simple work clothes and a friendly smile. Behind him, the settlement sprawled across the valley, rows of crops stretching to the horizon, greenhouses gleaming like jewels, and simple buildings clustered together. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in a courtyard. Everything looked peaceful. The Vakran scout ship landed with a hiss of steam. The ramp lowered, and Commander Wrath stepped out. He was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes scanned the settlement with barely hidden contempt. "I am Taehyun, colony administrator," the human said, extending his hand. "Welcome to New Hana." Wrath ignored the hand. "We are here to catalog this world for the Vakran Empire. You will show us everything." "Of course," Taehyun said. His smile never wavered. "We have nothing to hide. We're just farmers." For 3 days, the Vakran scouts examined the colony. Taehyun personally guided them through every area. He showed them the vast wheat fields where Hana-Rin, the agricultural director, explained crop yields and growing seasons. They visited the orchards where workers picked fruit. They saw the processing facilities where grain became flour. "How many people live here?" Wrath asked. 50,000, Taehyun replied. "Families, mostly. We came here 20 years ago to build a new life." "And your defenses?" Taehyun gestured to a small building near the edge of town. "Security Chief Daewoo runs a peacekeeping force. Maybe 200 officers. We've never needed more. Life is quiet here." Daewoo himself appeared, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor. He showed the Vakran his office, the small armory with basic weapons, and the patrol routes around the settlement. Everything seemed minimal, unimpressive. The Vakran scouts examined the weather satellites in orbit. They inspected the large silos that stored grain. They walked through the greenhouses where exotic plants grew in neat rows. Everywhere they looked, they saw the same thing: farmers working, children learning, people living simple lives. On the 3rd evening, Wrath stood with Taehyun on a hill overlooking the settlement. The sun set over the fields, painting everything gold and red. "This world has resources," Wrath said. "Food production is high. The Empire will take control when the time comes." "We hope there won't be conflict," Taehyun said quietly. "We just want to farm in peace." Wrath laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Peace is determined by the strong. Your colony will serve the Empire, or it will be destroyed." He turned away. "We leave in the morning. When our fleets return, surrender immediately. It will be easier for everyone." "I understand," Taehyun said. The next morning, the Vakran ships departed. Taehyun stood at the landing pad again, waving as they disappeared into the sky. He maintained his friendly expression until the ships vanished completely. Then his face changed. The warmth disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. Hana-Rin approached from behind. She no longer walked like a simple farm director. Her movements were precise, military. "They bought it completely," she said. "Of course they did," Taehyun replied. "They saw exactly what they expected to see. Weak humans. Easy prey." Daewoo joined them, a tablet computer in his hand. The scouts never detected the underground levels. The false readings worked perfectly. They counted our peacekeepers, but missed the rest. "How much time do we have?" Hana-Rin asked. Taehyun checked his own device. "Intelligence suggests 3 to 6 months before the Empire moves against human territory. When they do, they'll target the easy worlds first." "Good," Daewoo said. "We need the time." The 3 of them walked back toward the colony center. To any observer, they looked like ordinary administrators discussing farm business. But their conversation was anything but ordinary. "Begin rotation protocols," Taehyun said. "I want fresh personnel in the visible positions. Anyone who's been topside for more than a year cycles down." "The greenhouses?" Hannah Rin asked. "Increase production on the priority items. We'll need everything ready." As they talked, a truck rolled past carrying crates marked fertilizer. The driver nodded to them. He looked like a simple delivery worker, but his eyes were sharp, alert, the eyes of someone trained for combat. In the fields, workers continued their tasks. They pulled weeds, checked irrigation systems, and monitored soil quality. They looked like farmers because they were farmers. But they were also something else, something the Vakrin had completely missed. That evening, Taehyun stood in his office. Through the window, he could see the settlement below. Lights were coming on as darkness fell. Families gathered for dinner. Everything looked normal. He pressed a button on his desk. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a second room. The space beyond was filled with military equipment, tactical displays, weapons racks, communication systems. This was his real office. Hannah Rin's face appeared on the screen. "All department heads are standing by. Tell them to prepare," Taehyun said. "When the harvest season comes, we need to be ready." Hannah Rin smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "We've been ready for 20 years. The screen went dark. Taehyun turned back to the window. Below, in the innocent-looking settlement, 50,000 people continued their double lives. Farmers during the day. Soldiers always. The Vakrin thought they had found an easy target. They had no idea what they were really looking at. They had seen fields of grain and vegetables. They hadn't seen the real crop growing on New Hannah. They hadn't seen the army. 3 months passed. On New Hannah, life appeared to continue as normal. Workers tended the fields. Children attended school. The settlement hummed with the quiet rhythm of agricultural life. Then, on a cold morning, everything changed. Taehyun stood in his hidden command center, deep beneath the colony's main building. Around him, screens displayed information from across human space. His face was grim as he read the latest reports. "It started," he said. "The Vakrin Empire has declared war. They're moving against our outer colonies." Hannah Rin stood beside him, her expression hard. "How long until they reach us?" 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Taehyun pulled up a tactical display. "They're following the pattern we predicted. Hitting agricultural worlds first to secure food supplies for their war effort." "Then it's time," Hannah Rin said. Taehyun nodded. He reached for a red switch on the control panel. For a moment, his hand hovered over it. 20 years of preparation came down to this single moment. He flipped the switch. Throughout the colony, alarm systems activated. But these weren't emergency sirens. They were calm, measured tones, a specific pattern that every colonist recognized instantly. In the fields, workers stopped their tasks. A woman named Bora, who had been checking tomato plants, straightened up. She wiped her hands on her work pants and turned toward the settlement. Her casual movements were gone. She walked with military precision. Now. In the orchards, Young Ho put down his tools. For 3 years, he had posed as an irrigation specialist, maintaining the water systems for the fruit trees. Now he ran toward the colony center, his mind already shifting to his real job, weapons engineering. Near the livestock pens, Mi-sun watched the animals for a moment longer. She had spent 5 years managing the colony's cattle and chickens. She was good at it. She actually enjoyed the work. But her true expertise was tactical operations. She headed for the command bunker. All across the settlement, the transformation began. Beneath the main square, massive elevators descended into the earth. Groups of colonists rode down in silence. The first level was storage, grain silos, and food reserves. The second level held processing equipment. But the third level, the fourth, the fifth, these levels told a different story. The underground complex was enormous. It stretched beneath the entire colony like a hidden city. Massive chambers held equipment that had nothing to do with farming. Armories lined with weapons. Vehicle bays filled with military transports. Medical facilities designed for combat casualties. Training rooms where colonists had practiced for years. In one chamber, rows of combat armor waited on racks. The armor was advanced, lightweight but strong, equipped with targeting systems and communication gear. Colonists moved efficiently, each person going to their assigned station. Jaquan oversaw the weapons distribution. For 15 years, he had been listed in colony records as a crop rotation supervisor. It was a boring title for a boring job. Perfect cover. His real role was combat instructor, and he had trained every single colonist in this settlement. "Remember your assignments," he called out as people filed past. "This isn't a drill. Check your gear twice. Help your squad mates." The colonists moved like the soldiers they truly were. There was no panic, no confusion. Everyone knew exactly what to do. They had practiced this thousands of times. In the greenhouse sector, Hanarin supervised a different kind of harvest. The exotic plants the Vakrin scouts had seen weren't just decorative. Some produced compounds for combat stimulants medications that increased focus and reduced pain. Others yielded chemicals for explosives. The fertilizer, stored in warehouses throughout the colony, was actually military-grade propellant. "Begin processing," Hanarin ordered. "We need everything ready within 48 hours. Young Ho arrived at the engineering bay, located 7 levels underground. The space was filled with machinery the Vakrin scouts had never seen. Some of it was hidden beneath false floors. Other equipment had been disguised as farming machinery parts that could be quickly reassembled into weapon systems. "Start the conversion," he told his team. "Prioritize the anti-ship missiles. Then the orbital defense platforms." His second in command, a young man named Ki-jun, called up schematics on a display. "The harvester modifications are complete. We can have them combat-ready in 6 hours." Young Ho nodded. The colony's massive grain harvesters were impressive machines. They could cut and process crops across hundreds of acres. But with a few modifications, they became armored troop transports capable of carrying a full squad across rough terrain. In the command center, Misun coordinated with the other agricultural colonies scattered across human space. Her screen showed 15 different settlements, all similar to New Hana, all peaceful farming communities, all activating their military protocols simultaneously. Confirming harvest protocols, voices reported from each colony. One by one, the settlements transformed from agricultural centers into military bases. Taehyun watched the displays with satisfaction. "Total numbers?" he asked. Misun checked her tablet. "New Hana, 50,000 combat-ready personnel. Combined with the other colonies, we're looking at over 700,000 trained soldiers activating within the next 24 hours. Weapons status? All armories at full capacity. We have enough equipment to fight a sustained campaign for 18 months." Taehyun permitted himself a small smile. "The Vakrin think they're attacking farmers. They have no idea what's waiting for them." Daewoo entered the command center, now wearing full military uniform. His peacekeeping force had grown from 200 to 5,000, the real security division emerging from underground. "Perimeter defenses are activating," he reported. "The grain silos are opening." On the surface, the massive silos that stored wheat and corn began to split apart. Hidden panels slid aside, revealing vertical launch systems. Missiles emerged, pointing toward the sky. What the Vakrin had cataloged as simple storage, buildings were actually concealed weapon platforms. The weather satellites in orbit around New Hana powered up. Their solar panels unfolded, but not to collect sunlight. They were sensor arrays and weapon systems, disguised to look harmless. Beneath the orchards, hangar doors opened in the ground. Starfighters rose on lift platforms, sleek combat ships that had been hidden for 2 decades. Pilots ran to their craft, including Hanarin's daughter Sang-A, who had spent the last 3 years pretending to study soil composition. By nightfall, the transformation was complete. New Hana still looked peaceful from orbit. The same fields, the same buildings. But now, those fields concealed weapons. Those buildings were fortress bunkers. And the farmers were an army.HFY stood on the surface, looking at the settlement with new eyes. Tomorrow, the Vakran would arrive expecting easy conquest. They would find something very different. "Let them come," he said quietly. "We're ready to show them what humans really grow on our farming worlds." The Vakran fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Hana system. 20 warships hung in the darkness of space, their weapon systems ready. It was an overwhelming force, more than enough to crush a farming colony. Commander Rath stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the peaceful planet below. He felt confident. This would be an easy victory, the first of many as the Empire expanded into human territory. "Open communication channel," he ordered, on New Hana's surface. Tehan sat in his command center, watching the Vakran ships approach. Around him, dozens of officers monitored displays and coordinated defense systems. Everything was ready. The communication screen lit up, showing Rath's face. "Human colony," Rath said, his voice cold. "You are now property of the Vakran Empire. Surrender immediately, and your people will be spared. Resist, and we will destroy everything." Tehan leaned back in his chair. He kept his expression neutral, almost sad. "Commander Rath, I remember you. You visited us 3 months ago." "I did. I saw your farms, your weak defenses. You have no chance against us. We're just farmers," Tehan said softly. "Please, reconsider this. There's no need for violence." Rath laughed. "Farmers who think they can negotiate. Your time is over, human. I'm sending landing forces now. Don't make this difficult." The screen went dark. Tehan's sad expression vanished, replaced by cold determination. "Well, we tried to warn him. All units weapons free. Show them what we really are." In orbit, the Vakran ships moved into landing formation. Troop carriers detached from the main fleet, heading toward the planet's surface. Rath watched the operation proceed smoothly. Then alarm screamed across his bridge. "Commander, weapons lock. Multiple targets acquiring our ships." Rath spun toward his tactical officer. "What? From where?" "Everywhere. The surface, the satellites were the first missile launched from New Hana's surface. Then another. Then dozens." The grain silos that Rath had walked past months ago opened like flowers, revealing launch systems that had been hidden beneath innocent-looking structures. Missiles streaked upward, their engines bright against the planet's atmosphere. The weather satellites activated. Rath had checked them personally during his inspection. They were supposed to be simple monitoring devices. Now they rotated, revealing weapons platforms. Energy beams lanced out, targeting the Vakran ships with precision. "Evasive action!" Rath shouted. "Return fire!" But the Vakran ships were in landing formation, close together, unprepared for combat. The first wave of missiles struck home. A troop carrier exploded, debris scattering across space. Another ship lost its engines, spinning out of control. Rath's flagship rocked as energy beams hammered its shields. How is this possible? They're farmers. On the ground, the battle began. Vakran landing craft that had already entered the atmosphere found themselves flying into a storm of anti-aircraft fire. The irrigation systems across New Hana's fields were actually concealed weapon emplacements. They opened up simultaneously, filling the sky with tracer rounds and missiles. One landing craft crashed in a wheat field. Vakran soldiers poured out, weapons ready. They formed defensive positions, expecting panicked farmers. Instead, they faced Jinwoo and his special forces team. Jinwoo had been waiting in the tunnels. Beneath the fields, the same maintenance tunnels for irrigation that Daewoo had mentioned to the Vakrin scouts. The tunnels were real, but they were also tactical networks that connected the entire colony. Hit them now. Jinwoo ordered. His team emerged from hidden entrances throughout the field. They wore combat armor and carried advanced weapons. The Vakran soldiers barely had time to react before the humans opened fire with devastating accuracy. The battle was brief and brutal. Jinwoo's team knew every inch of this terrain. They had practiced assaults on this exact field dozens of times. The Vakran were confused, disoriented, fighting an enemy that appeared and disappeared through tunnels they hadn't known existed. In the sky above, Sang-A led her fighter squadron into combat. The starfighters had launched from hidden hangars beneath the orchards, massive underground facilities that the Vakrin scouts had walked right over without detecting. Blue Squadron, attack pattern Delta, she called over the radio. Target the troop carriers first. Her fighter dove toward a Vakran landing craft. She fired, and the craft exploded. Around her, other human pilots engaged the enemy with skill born from years of training. Sang-A had grown up on this colony. She had learned to fly almost as soon as she could walk. Her mother, Hana Rin, had made sure every child on New Hana received both agricultural education and military training. Now that training was paying off. In orbit, Commander Wrath tried desperately to reorganize his fleet. Half his ships were damaged or destroyed. The humans had hit them with a coordinated strike that seemed impossible for a farming colony. Pull back. All ships retreat to safe distance. His flagship's engines burned hard, pushing away from the planet. Other surviving ships followed. Behind them, New Hana's defenses continued firing. On the surface, Na-Yun coordinated intelligence operations from a bunker that the colony records listed as a crop research facility. She tracked every Vakran movement, feeding information to combat teams across the colony. Enemy forces retreating from Zones 3 and 7, she reported. They're trying to regroup at the landing site in Sector 12. Tae-Hein studied the tactical display. Don't let them. Mi-sun, deploy the harvesters. Mi-sun smiled. With pleasure. Across the fields, the massive grain harvesters roared to life. But they weren't harvesting crops. The machines had been converted into armored vehicles, each one carrying a full squad of soldiers. They rolled toward the Vakran positions like mechanical monsters. Their cutting blades replaced with armor plating and weapons. The Vakrin soldiers who had managed to establish a defensive position saw the harvesters coming. They fired their weapons, but the heavy machines kept coming, shrugging off the attacks. When the harvesters reached the Vakrin lines, they deployed their troops, fresh soldiers who poured out shooting. By nightfall, the battle was over. The Vakran fleet limped away from New Hana, having lost 12 of their 20 ships. Commander Wrath sat on his damaged bridge, staring at the planet in disbelief. The farming colony had destroyed more than half his fleet. On New Hana, Tae-Hein walked through the settlement. Damage was minimal. The Vakran had barely touched the actual colony before being driven off. Around him, soldiers were already returning to their farming duties, though now they wore their military uniforms openly. He found Hana Rin in one of the greenhouses. She was checking on plants that had been damaged during the battle. Casualties? She asked. Minimal. 30 wounded, none critically. No deaths. Hana Rin nodded, relieved. And the Vakran? Running. They'll report back to their empire, and then things will get interesting. They stood together in silence, looking out at the fields. In the distance, workers were repairing damage to an irrigation system. Overhead, fighters patrolled the sky. "Do you think they understand now?" Hannah Rin asked Tae-hai and smiled. "They will. They came looking for farmers. They found soldiers. And now the whole empire is about to learn that when humans plant colonies, we plant them deep." News of New Hannah's victory spread across human space within hours. The story seemed impossible, a farming colony destroying a Vakran fleet. But the evidence was clear. Sensor records, combat footage, and Commander Rath's own humiliated report confirmed it. The Vakran, Empire's military command, gathered in emergency session. They studied the reports in shocked silence. "How did we miss this?" one general demanded. "Our scouts inspected that colony personally. They saw what they expected," another replied. "Farms, peaceful settlements. They never looked deeper. Are there others?" That was the question that terrified them. If New Hannah was secretly military, how many other human farming colonies were the same? The answer came within days. Across human territory, 15 agricultural colonies received the same coded message that New Hannah had gotten. One by one, they activated. Farms became fortresses. Farmers became soldiers. Hidden armies emerged into the light. The colony of Bright River, population 60,000, revealed underground shipyards that had been building warships for a decade. Harvest Moon, population 45,000, activated defensive systems that rivaled a military starbase. Green Valley, population 70,000, deployed an armored division that had been training beneath their cornfields. Tae-hai found himself promoted to regional commander, coordinating multiple colonies. He sat in an expanded command center, now connected by secure communications to 15 other settlements. Total force estimate? He asked during a strategy meeting. Me-sun pulled up the numbers. Combined across all colonies, 750,000 trained personnel, full military equipment, enough supplies for sustained operations. The Vakran won't make the same mistake twice, they were warned. They'll come with everything they have. "Let them," Tae-hai said. "We're ready." On New Hannah, Young-ho worked day and night in the engineering base. His team had captured Vakran equipment during the first battle, and now they were tearing it apart to understand how it worked. "Their shields use a rotating frequency," he explained to his assistants. "If we can predict the pattern, we can punch through them." His team used chemical processes developed for agriculture to manufacture new weapons. The same techniques that created fertilizers and pesticides could be modified to produce advanced propellants and explosives. What looked like innocent farming chemistry was actually sophisticated weapons development. Within 2 weeks, Young-ho's team had created new missiles specifically designed to defeat Vakran shields. They tested them in hidden ranges beneath the colony's fields. "Perfect," Young-ho said, watching the test results. "Send the specifications to the other colonies. We'll mass-produce them." The Vakran Empire prepared its response. This time, they sent a massive fleet, 100 ships, including their most powerful battle cruisers. The target was New Hannah again. They wanted to make an example of the colony that had humiliated them. Commander Rath led the fleet personally. He had been demoted after his first defeat, but given a chance to redeem himself. He studied everything known about New Hannah, looking for weaknesses. "They can't have infinite resources," he told his officers. "There's still just one colony. We'll overwhelm them with numbers." The Vakran fleet arrived at New Hannah with weapons charged and shields at maximum. They expected a fight this time. They were ready for the missile systems, the hidden fighters, the defensive platforms. What they weren't ready for was the plants. Hannah Rin had been working on special projects in her greenhouses. For 20 years, She had been developing crops that could serve multiple purposes. Some produced food, some made medicine, and some were weapons. As the Vakran ships entered orbit, New Hana released clouds of specially engineered spores into space. The spores were designed to survive in vacuum for short periods. They spread across the orbital zone, invisible to Vakran sensors. "What is that?" Wrath demanded as his sensors detected the anomaly. "Unknown organic matter, Commander. It's everywhere." The spores attached to Vakran ship hulls. Within minutes, they began releasing a caustic compound, something Hana Rin's team had developed from modified fungal strains. The compound ate through paint, then metal, creating thousands of tiny holes. "Hull breaches on all outer decks," an officer shouted. "How is this possible?" "It's the plants," Wrath whispered in horror. "They weaponized their crops." Meanwhile, Jinwu led ground operations. The Vakrin had learned from their first defeat and deployed their landing forces more carefully this time. But Jinwu had new tactics ready. His teams used the colony's irrigation systems to flood certain fields with specially treated water. When Vakran troops advanced through those areas, they found the mud unusually slippery and difficult to navigate. The treatment was actually a polymer that Hana Rin's greenhouses produce supposedly for soil conditioning. Actually, a combat application. Vakran soldiers slipped and struggled while human forces fired from prepared positions. The terrain itself fought against the invaders. In the orchards, defensive systems released clouds of pollen, but this wasn't ordinary pollen. It was genetically modified to irritate Vakran respiratory systems. Enemy soldiers found themselves coughing and wheezing. Their combat effectiveness reduced. Sang-A flew patrol above the battlefield, coordinating with ground forces. Blue Squadron, they're trying to land reinforcements in Sector 8. Hit them before they touch down. Their squadron, Dove. The Vakran had brought more ships this time, but the humans have more tricks. Young Ho's new anti-shield missiles proved devastatingly effective. Vakran ships that thought themselves protected found their defenses failing. Nayun monitored communications from her intelligence center. She intercepted Vakran transmissions and fed false information back to them, creating confusion in their ranks. "Their command ship is pulling back," she reported. "Commander Wrath is retreating again." Taehyun watched the battle unfold on multiple screens. The Vakran had brought overwhelming force, but human ingenuity was winning. Agricultural knowledge, combined with military precision, created combinations the enemy couldn't predict. "They're using terraforming techniques," one of his officers observed, "turning environmental control into weapons." "Exactly," Taehyun said. "We know how to shape entire planets. Using those skills in combat is just creative application." The Vakran fleet withdrew after losing 30 ships. Wrath's forces had been defeated again, this time by an enemy that turned farming itself into warfare. In the aftermath, human colonies went on the offensive. The 15 military agricultural settlements began reclaiming nearby star systems. They moved carefully but confidently, using their combined forces to push back Vakran positions. Each colony brought unique capabilities. New Hana specialized in bioweapons and environmental combat. Bright River had the shipyards. Harvest Moon had the best defensive systems. Together, they were formidable. Nissan coordinated multi-colony operations from New Hana's expanded command center. On her screens, she watched human forces advancing across 30 star systems. "We're winning," Daewoo said, studying the tactical maps. "For now," Taehyun cautioned. "The Vakran Empire is huge. They have thousands of worlds. We've hurt them, but they're not defeated." "Maybe not," Hana Rin said, joining them. "But they're afraid now. They see farmers and wonder what else we're hiding. That fear is powerful." Outside the command center, life on New Hana continued its strange duality. Workers tended fields that also concealed weapons. Children learned crop rotation and combat tactics. Greenhouses produced both tomatoes and chemical weapons. Young Ho stood in his engineering bay, looking at a new project. What if we could make the crops themselves mobile? He mused. Defensive plants that could move and respond. His assistants looked at him like he was crazy. But on Muhanna, crazy ideas had a way of becoming reality. Across human space, the farmer soldiers had changed the war. The Vakran Empire, which had expected easy conquest, now faced an enemy that grew stronger with every harvest. And somewhere in their high command, Vakran generals looked at star maps and asked the terrifying question: how many more colonies are hiding armies? 1 year after the first battle, the war had changed everything. Human agricultural colonies had reclaimed 30 star systems from Vakran control. The empire that had seemed unstoppable now found itself retreating on multiple fronts. Every time their forces attacked a farming world, they discovered hidden armies and unexpected weapons. The Vakran's fear grew with each defeat. They stopped trying to conquer human colonies and focused on defending their own territory. Their intelligence services worked desperately to identify which human settlements were military and which were truly peaceful. They could never be sure. Taehyun stood in a conference room aboard a diplomatic vessel in neutral space. Outside the windows, stars drifted in the darkness. Inside, representatives from both sides prepared for negotiations. "Are you ready for this?" Hannah Rin asked. She stood beside him, wearing a formal uniform that showed her true rank: colonel, not agricultural director. "As ready as I'll ever be," Taehyun replied. He wore his military uniform too, with insignia showing his promotion to regional commander. "It's strange. A year ago, they thought we were just farmers." "We are farmers," Hanarin said with a slight smile. "We just happen to be soldiers too." The Vakran delegation entered. Commander Wrath was among them, though he held a minor position now after his repeated failures. The lead negotiator was a high-ranking diplomat named Krell, who looked tired and defeated. Everyone took their seats. Representatives from other human colonies joined via holographic link commanders from Bright River, Harvest Moon, Green Valley, and a dozen others. All of them had been simple farmers before the war. Krell spoke first. "We come seeking peace. The Vakran Empire acknowledges that this war cannot be won through military force. We're listening," Taehyun said neutrally. "But first, we must know." Krell leaned forward. "How did we miss this?" "Our scouts, our intelligence, we studied your colonies for years. How did you hide entire armies?" Taehyun exchanged glances with Hanarin. They had discussed whether to answer this question honestly. "You saw what you expected to see," Taehyun said finally. "You came to our worlds and saw farms, crops, peaceful settlements. You never asked the right questions." "But the infrastructure," another Vakran officer protested. "The weapons, the ships, the underground bases, those take decades to build. How did you hide construction on that scale?" Hanarin answered this time. "Because we built them while building our farms." Every foundation for a barn also supported bunker construction. Every irrigation system included tactical tunnels. Every greenhouse produced food and military supplies. We didn't hide two separate things. We built one thing that served two purposes. She pulled up holographic displays showing New Hannah's structure. The Vakran representatives stared as she revealed the truth: how every building, every system, every structure on the colony had dual functionality. "It's all integrated," she continued. "You can't separate the military from the agricultural because they're the same thing. Our farms feed us and arm us. Our fields grow food and conceal weapons. Our people are farmers and soldiers at once. But why?" Krell asked, genuinely confused. "Why go to such lengths? Why not just build military bases?" Taehan stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars for a long moment before answering. Because Earth learned from history, he said quietly. Humanity has been caught unprepared too many times. We've been invaded, conquered, nearly destroyed because we separated our civilian populations from our military strength. When enemies came, they targeted our military bases first, leaving civilians defenseless. He turned back to face the Vakrin delegation. So when we started colonizing new worlds, we made a decision. Never again would humans be helpless. Every colony would be able to defend itself. But we also didn't want to live our lives as soldiers, constantly preparing for war. We wanted to build communities, raise families, grow things. The solution was integration, Hanarin added. Make every colony self-sufficient for both peace and war. Train every colonist in both farming and fighting. Create infrastructure that serves both purposes. That way, we could live normal lives while staying ready. Young-ho spoke up from one of the holographic links. It's actually efficient. The same chemical processes we use to make fertilizer can produce propellants. Irrigation systems work as tunnel networks. Agricultural equipment converts to military vehicles. Without maintaining two separate infrastructures, just one very versatile one. Krell sat back in his chair, processing this information. So every human agricultural colony is potentially military? Not every colony, Taehyun said. Some are purely civilian, but you'll never know which ones. That's the point. We created strategic uncertainty. Any farming world might be a hidden fortress. Would you risk attacking one to find out? The Vakrin delegates exchanged uncomfortable looks. The answer was clearly no. How many colonies are military capable? Krell asked. Taehyun smiled slightly. That's classified. But I can tell you this. Enough that the Empire should never again assume a human settlement is an easy target. The negotiations continued for 3 days. In the end, a peace treaty was signed. The Vakrin Empire agreed to withdraw from all contested systems and establish a non-aggression pact with human territory. In exchange, humanity agreed to clearly mark which border systems had military capabilities, reducing the uncertainty, but some uncertainty remained by design. The Vakrin would never be completely sure which colonies were just farms and which hid armies. 6 months after the treaty, Taehyun returned to New Hana. The settlement had grown during his absence. New fields had been planted, new buildings constructed. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in the fields. Everything looked peaceful. Normal. Taehyun walked through the settlement with Hana-rin. They passed workers harvesting crops, families having picnics, students learning in outdoor classrooms. But now, everyone wore their dual identity openly. Farmers wore military rank insignia on their work clothes. Teachers included combat training in their lessons. The settlement had stopped pretending. It's different, Taehyun observed. Before, we hid what we were. Now everyone knows. Is that bad? Hana-rin asked. No, I think it's honest. We are farmers. We are soldiers. We're both, and we don't have to hide it anymore. They stopped at a new monument in the town square, a sculpture showing a farmer holding both wheat and a rifle. Names of the 30 colonists who had died during the year of fighting were engraved on its base. We paid a price, Hana-rin said softly. We did. But we protected what we built. And we showed the galaxy that humanity won't be easy prey. That evening, a ship arrived from Earth carrying government officials. They wanted to inspect the colony and understand how the dual-purpose system worked so well. Taehyun gave them a tour. He showed them the integrated infrastructure, explained the training programs, and demonstrated how agricultural knowledge translated to military applications. It's remarkable, one official said. You've created something unique. Peaceful settlements that can't be conquered. That was always the goal. Taehyun replied. We wanted to build homes, not fortresses. But we made our homes strong enough to protect. The official looked out over the fields. We're planning more colonies. Hundreds of them. Can this model be replicated? Absolutely, Hanarin said. In fact, we've been documenting everything. Training protocols, construction techniques, agricultural military integration. Any new colony can use our template. Then humanity will spread across the stars, the official said, planting seeds that no enemy can uproot. Taehyun smiled at the metaphor. Exactly. Years later, New Hana thrived. The colony had expanded, population now over 80,000. New generations grew up learning both farming and fighting as natural parts of life in the greenhouses. Advanced food crops grew alongside medicinal plants and defensive organisms. In the fields, workers used equipment that could transform from harvester to military vehicle in minutes. Underground, training facilities ensured every citizen could defend their home. But mostly, life was peaceful. Children played. Families gathered for meals. Crops grew under the sun. The settlement hummed with the quiet rhythm of agricultural life. Taehyun, now older and gray-haired, stood on a hill overlooking the settlement. Hannah Rin joined him, her own hair touched with silver. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Building this way? Living this double life? Taehyun considered the question. Below, he could see farmers working, students learning, people living full lives. The weapons were there, hidden but ready. The soldiers were there, disguised as civilians but trained and capable. No, he said finally. We created something worth protecting, and we made it strong enough to protect itself. We planned for peace, but we're always ready to harvest war. That's not a burden, it's wisdom. A young boy ran past them, laughing as he chased a dog through the grass. The boy wore a student's uniform with a small military patch on the shoulder. Tomorrow, he would learn about crop rotation. Next week, about tactical formations. Both were just parts of his education, as natural as reading and mathematics. That was the legacy of New Hana and colonies like it. Humanity had learned to grow more than just food on their farming worlds. They grew strength. They grew resilience. They grew future generations who understood that peace and preparedness weren't opposites but partners.